Good evening, Mr. Chair. So we got 4 members that have asked for excused absence. Ms. Peggy Clybourne, Ms. Brandy Daniels, Mr. Anthony Klontz, and Mr. Douglas Killian.
What is the pleasure of the board regarding the request for excused absence for Doug, Peggy, Anthony, and Brandy?
I make a motion to approve the excused absences.
You got a second?
I second.
Been approved and properly second. All those in favor use voting sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Okay, approval of the agenda. You've seen the agenda that was sent to you by staff via email, and I think you have copies on your, in front of you. What is the pleasure of the board?
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
I have a motion to approve. Get a second?
Second.
Been moved and properly second. All those in favor use your voting sign aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Okay, next, approval of the minutes from the November regular meeting. You've had a chance to review those in the email sent by staff. What is the pleasure of the board?
I move those minutes be accepted.
Been moved can we get a second?
I'll second.
Darlene. Okay, it's been moved and properly second. What's the pleasure of the board? Use your voting sign of aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. New business, staff.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Good seeing everybody. Thanks for rescheduling or reshuffling your schedule to meet on a Tuesday night. I know we usually do it on Monday nights, but in observance of the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, we always kind of shuffle it back to Tuesday. So it's kind of messed a couple of our board members up. But with that being said, we do have a couple action items on your agenda tonight. The first one up is a rezoning request. That's titled Gray Point Motors on your agenda packet. Parcels 20628 and 28376. That's located on Chapman Street. That's at its intersection with Depot. Site data is 3.17 acres. So the current zoning district is multifamily conditional district. And if you guys remember, we did that a couple of years ago with the age-targeted multifamily development there. That project fell through, so that this property went back on the market and is currently under contract by the applicant, well, the titled Gray Point Motors. The applicant is actually the owner, Linda Rock Best. So proposed zoning district is general business conditional district. And a proposed condition would be a used car dealership with a mechanic shop. So just some of our housekeeping. Notification was posted on the site back in December on the 2nd. Adjacent property owners were mailed notification of this request the same day, December 2nd, 2022. Subsequently, the applicant did request to table this or postpone it to this meeting. So originally it was supposed to be on the December 19th meeting, but we've postponed it tonight. Again, we sent out adjacent property owner notifications on January 3rd. Just to get you oriented with the site, commonly referred to this as the H property. You can see why. It's outlined in blue there, but you can see obviously it's Winterville Parkway, Highway 11, Main Street here, Chapman, Depot, Gateway Church sits there, the tax office sits here, 11 and Main, townhome development down here, so and then our downtown area here. Just an aerial of the property, so you can see again the church, Chapman, Depot, Main Street here. So just a close-up of the aerial, and then should be an overlay of the site plan. So there's a submitted site plan. I'm going to show a little bit better picture. You would gain access here and here out on Chapman Street. DOT is going to restrict access out here, so there will be no access allowed out on Winterville Parkway. So there's your overall site plan. So you can see they're showing the actual structures and parking for the car lot and the mechanics shop. There's just a little bit better of a shot of that. Again, all your parking in the back, stormwater is kind of right here. There's your structures for your bays. and offices and all that good stuff for the dealership along with the mechanic shop. So current zoning, as stated before, it's multifamily residential with a conditional district aspect of it. You've got central business kind of scattered in here, and then you've got existing R8. So then you got commercial on the corners here, and then multifamily residential down here with the 11 at Main. So land use map, that's just showing what's currently there. You can see that this property, subject property, is vacant. You got some single family, all the yellow single family residential, and then as stated, this hadn't been updated yet, but this will be the townhome development there. So our future land use plan. So primarily the whole downtown area, and then across 11 is designated as our mixed use character area. So for our mixed use character area, it's described as a mix of commercial, retail, restaurants, service oriented businesses. Variety of residential options can be in there as well. So mixed use centers allow flexibility to respond to market demands by emphasizing the form of development over the use or intensity. These areas feel much made for people in here. Just to give a little hustle and bustle with some of the small town hospitality mixed in. So there you can see our potential zoning down here. General business, potentially MR. Central business with potential MR, GB, and a central neighborhood possibility. But uses would go back to retail, restaurants, and shopping, creating active street frontage. So obviously, when we look at our rezoning request, we want to go to our recommendations policy and implementations. So when we look at the mixed use part of our land use plan and our small area plan down there, part of the downtown is activating that downtown by allowing people to live near downtown, and that encourages and allows more dense residential development on the outskirts of downtown. So expanding office commercial uses on the edges of downtown, where there would be limited conflict with established residential stuff. So I say all that to get into this as well. So the small area plan, so you can see when we did our small area plan, this is Winterville Parkway. The trees line there would be frontage on this property, and you can see our small area plan designates this for residential. Like I said, on the outskirts was really where we want to activate our residential part. More density down there, more walkability, gives a little bit more of a feel of walking, pedestrian-oriented, service-oriented businesses downtown. Just a close-up of that small area plan. You can see this is the area we're looking at. Those that indicates residential in our small area plan. So with all that being said, the proposed general business conditional use district would not allow land uses that are compatible with the general character of the area. The property is in a location that serves a primary entrance to downtown and is a walkable neighborhood and with small-scale businesses. So while some light commercial may be appropriate, the proposed use of a used car dealership with a mechanic shop is not consistent with the comprehensive land use plan. So therefore, staff's recommended denial. Staff recommends denial of the request to rezone 3.17 acres from MR to GB. So our process, public comments can now be entertained by P&Z. Then you guys will make a recommendation to the council. They'll see that recommendation on their next agenda, February 13th, to schedule a public hearing, which will be held March 13th. So with that, I'll make a note that you do have hard copies from comments from John Bowling. He's the pastor of Gateway Church, and Robert Palmiter with Almost New Auto. So both of those are at your spots now. We can read through those if you want.
Give the council time to just look over them at their time. And before we open up public comment, we'll, if there's any questions for staff from board members.
I
I do have one for Brian.
Yes, sir.
I noticed that there's two parcels here, Brian. Are these parcels going to have to be combined before we can put this business in here?
Yeah, that would be part of their site plan review process. So, yeah, to avoid any setback conflicts, it would be a recombination. Really easy process.
Okay.
Are there any other questions from board members? Now, didn't we have a request, I guess a while back, where there was plans to build some type of, I guess, residency type of units or something in that area that
Yeah, it was
never
gonna
came to
be-
fruition?
It was going to be age-targeted 55 and older, but retirement slash, well, it wasn't going to be assisted living, it was just going to be a retirement type center. So it was going to be 55 units in there. I think that was the number, don't quote me on that without looking at my notes. But a fairly small multifamily project was going to be in there, yes, sir.
Right, and at that time, we had approved for that to happen, but the developers just never,
Yeah, the funding fell through on that project, so they washed their hands of it and moved on. Yep.
okay. Any other questions from board members? Do we have the applicant present that would like to make any comments?
Yeah, I'll turn it over to, we got the applicant's representative, Mike Baldwin's in attendance, so I'll turn it over to Mike if he's got some, you don't have anything queued up, do you? All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. and
Yes, sir.
Board members, I'm Mike Baldwin. I represent Mr. Bradley Gray. Bradley is a lifelong resident of Pitt County. His present location for Gray Point Motors is at the intersection of Old Tar Road and Evans Street. There at that corner, he's been in business approximately 5.5 years. His dad, you know, you don't like to ever associate somebody with somebody else, but I will. His dad is Mr. Edwin Gray, longtime CPA of Greenville, very much involved in a lot of civic activities and things like that. Bradley, he has a first-class business there. Where it's at now, and that's what he would like to put over here as well. He's needing to relocate primarily because the lane widening improvements that are going to occur at the intersection of Old Tar and Evans Street with the widening. If y'all have ridden by his facility, it's nice, neat, top-notch, high-quality vehicles. Most of them, well, I think all of them being the trucks type deal, pickup trucks. His operating hours there, which would be the same as here, are Monday through Friday, 9 to 6, Saturday, 9 to 3, and closed on Sunday. I don't think that any of those operating times should have any negative impact on the Gateway Church, which is right next door. Also, just on the other side of Gateway Church is the White's International truck type dealership that, if I'm not mistaken, and Brian, you might correct me, I think White's was there before Gateway was there. Is that? I know White's has been there a pretty long time. Yeah, I think so. So, you know, my feeling is if White's is a compatible use for Gateway to move in beside, what this type of use built in compliance with plans that y'all would approve, where we've centrally located the building up toward the road and the parking, would be a good neighbor as well, especially if you look at your zoning map. Everything's red around it. So it would, it would make sense that even though it doesn't align with the comprehensive plan, it does completely align with your existing zoning, current zoning that's out there. And I have yet to see, in almost 34 years of doing this, I have yet to ever see anybody take a piece of currently zoned property and amend it to align with a comprehensive plan, especially when it would be of the down zoning type. Since we had originally submitted and then we asked for a continuance, I'd learned that, there was some concern from Gateway. I hadn't seen the letter from Gateway Church. I would like to get a copy of that if that's possible, as well as I'd like to get the letter that was also referenced from the All Point car dealership as well. I think that would be beneficial. But once I heard the concern from Gateway, I asked Bradley if he would consider putting a row of, I call them Jolly Green Giants. They're more of a Leland cypress type buffer tree, evergreen. However, they don't get the bagworms in them that Lelands do. And, y'all have seen rows of Lelands in the past. It'll hit bagworms, will hit one Leland, and then it'll take the whole row out. So that's one thing that the Jolly Green Giants are not susceptible to those bagworms. So with the and I dropped that plan off by Gateway Church to Pastor Bowling early this morning, and I brought those plans to Brian as well for y'all to show y'all tonight with the trees added on that side. It looks to me, it appears there's a good fit with the current zoning. The current zoning is not going to change, y'all. I think we have to look to see if whether this use it makes more sense than the multifamily residential that's out there that's approved now. Also, I did forget to add that there's a building contractor's office right across the street as well on the east side of Chapman Street. So that is another use. So if you look at our plan, we tried to lay this out as strategically as possible to protect the residential uses. It pretty much at the in between the existing house and that falls kind of in the middle of the lot, the green area, and the property owned by the Barbers, we're going to have nothing there. That's going to just remain grass. Other than obviously it will be cleaned up and planted nicely with a nice stand of grass. We've situated basically the facility use up toward the road. The lighting, we'll use lighting. The lighting on the side closest to Gateway Church will shine toward the building. The lighting along Highway 11 will shine toward the building, and then the lighting on the southern side of the property will shine to the building, and we can also use just down lights as well too, with your completely horizontal lights that just project an array of illumination straight down. So, if that would be a consideration that this board would consider, I think we would be. I know that our client would be willing to do that. So with that all said, I think we've got a good laid out plan, and I think more importantly, the request is in harmony with your current zoning. So with that said, I'll be glad to answer any questions. We will have, it's everything in Winterville that has over 20,000 square feet of impervious area and/or disturbs more than an acre. We will be required to put in stormwater management treatment improvements that we show the approximate location or size. It will be located there, but the approximate size as well. So, I think that pretty much covers everything. Be glad to answer any questions.
Are there any questions?
Mike, so tell me again what the access roads are to get into all the access points. I know you mentioned it, Brian, but if you could just tell me again what the access points are to,
Yes, sir.
to the business.
Yeah, Mr. Henry, it would be just that the one single access point there to the north of, toward the north property line. It comes in there just approximately about 100 feet north of West Depot Street intersection. And there's just one.
There's just
one in and one out. We did that. I mean, obviously, we did that to minimize impacts, but it's also about saving $1 too. I mean, a facility, this is not a large car sales facility. The building size is, shoot. It has escaped me for right this second. I've got them. It's 131 by 50, so it's about 8,000 square feet.
Are there any other questions?
Mike, I'm not sure if you can answer this or not, but I'm hoping you can shed some light on it. I see that the plan kind of shows that they're going to have some bays to work on vehicles and things. Are they going to actually do mechanic work, or is this just bays for them to come in and clean up vehicles to put them out for sales?
No, and if I stump my toe on this, I'm gonna have Bradley correct me, but no, I think there's 3 of the bays that'll be actually service bays, and then one bay, the bay closest to the single family residence, will be a wash bay. But Bradley, is that correct?
That's accurate.
Okay, and Mr. Bradley, he's with us tonight.
Oh, okay.
In the light blue sport coat in the back at the doorway.
So when you say service bays, I mean, is that just changing oil and doing little tune-ups, or is that tearing down motors and?
Most of it will be working on vehicles that are just reconning for the lot. So we don't plan on taking a lot of business off the streets as far as more so just vehicles for the lot. So so the mechanic work that we will be doing will not be a great scale. It'll be more toned down.
What's your approximate sales per month?
So we're a quite small lot. We do anywhere from 15 to 25. So we're a smaller used car lot where we do anywhere from 15 to about 25 retail deals a month.
Okay.
Are there any other questions from the board for the applicant? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Baldwin. Thank you, Mr. Bradley.
Thank you.
Just before we open up public comment, just a reminder of the board that what is before us is, and what Mr. Baldwin presented is, would be more appropriately addressed when and if we were to get a plat application. The question before us now is whether or not to rezone the current lot from one use to another. So with that, we will open up the floor for public comments. We'll give each individual who has a public comment 3 minutes to share their concerns, and at that point, we will move on and then entertain a vote from the board with regard to the recommendation to approve or not approve to the town council.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask a favor of anybody that speaks. There's a pad right here behind us. After you get through speaking, will you just put your name and affiliation, address, that stuff? You can do it after you speak to keep it flowing. But there's going to be a lot of people speaking, so I want to help out.
I'll try to be brief. My name is Kevin Smeltz, and I'm a member of Gateway Christian Center, and in the interest of time, I'm going to be the only one speaking from our church, but if I could, our pastor, John Bullen's here, if everybody else who's here from the church, if they could stand up, I'd greatly appreciate it. This is something that we are concerned about. We've been a member of this community for 30 years and feel like it has a certain personality and essence to that community, and it is our belief that this commercial use is not conducive with that. And not only do we believe that, it appears that the city's land use plan agrees with that as well. And we concur with the city's recommendation, city staff, that you do not approve this recommendation. I worked for the Greenville Police Department for 30 years and worked somewhat with the Board of Adjustments. And while Mr. Baldwin has a number of years' experience, my experience is once you let the genie out of the bottle, you can't get it back in. Once you change this land use, it will remain that land use. And I was happy to see that you put the condition on it that it remain a car dealership, but it can't come into something else, because that's been my experience as well. However, if and when this place goes out of business, and I certainly don't hope that they go out of business, but we'll be back here every time for somebody that wants a different land use. So we're asking you to keep the genie in the bottle. We have several specific concerns, and they may be addressed in the business plan, but we were given this morning. Specifically, I can't tell how many parking spaces there are, but my experience with neighborhood car lots is they end up putting cars out on the street. Chapman Street is not designed to have cars out on the street, particularly at a T intersection with Depot Street. Any cars parked out on the street will block the line of sight turning off of Chapman onto Depot and Depot onto Chapman, which is directly across from the church. I also mentioned our church owns the property across the street on the other corner of Depot and Chapman as well. However, this may be in their business plan and it may be addressed. Also, I wasn't sure whether their access was going to be on Chapman Street or onto 11 until Mr. Baldwin made his recommendation. It's going to be on Chapman Street. This is a side street, and it's not conducive to having car movers and big trucks come in. It is a small business, and Mr. Baldwin mentioned the business that's on the other side of us, White's. Their access is out onto 11, not onto Chapman. I think that is a big difference. That's pretty much our concerns, and again, they may be addressed in this business plan, but we strongly ask you to go with the city planning's recommendation to deny this request. Thank you.
There any other public comment regarding the rezoning request for Great Point Motors? If there be no other public comments regarding this matter, hold on, one more.
Good evening. Appreciate y'all giving us the opportunity to express our concerns. I'm Neil Eltz. Me and my family here own E&S Homes and Construction. We own the green parcel right in the middle there where that's at. That's used as a home that we rent out currently to a lady that's a good tenant there. She has a small child there as well. That property would actually touch 3 corners of our property. Their proposal would touch 3 corners of our property. We're concerned about the noise level as well as the safety of the children there. Just feel very crowded there. Like I said, we own a small portion, but that's just our feelings and our concerns about the rezoning request, and we just against it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other? If there be no other public comments, what is the pleasure of the board regarding the request? Rezoning request for Great Point from multi-mixed use to request?
Mr. Chairman, I have one more question or comment.
Sir.
Is there some kind of regulation or rule that there has to be some kind of buffer? That's required, even if we said we wanted one, is there one, I mean, there's got to be a fence, or there's no rule if there?
No, so anytime you've got different land uses, there will be a buffer. I'm not exactly sure what land use classification a car dealership and body shop would, or a mechanic shop would be, but typically it's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of a 20 to 30-foot buffer. You can reduce that with a fence, but there will be a requirement for it if and when the board, if there's approval, and that'll be done part of the site plan approval process. So they'll have to submit site plans showing everything. That would include buffers, parking, stormwater, access, I mean, the full gamut, so.
So, again, what is the pleasure of the board regarding the request for rezoning?
I move that request for rezoning be denied.
We have a motion to deny the request. Is there a second? Okay, it's been moved in, properly second. All those in favor, do you need a head count or roll call, Mr. Chair? Mr. Clerk? Don? Okay. All right, so those in favor, use your right hand voting sign of aye.
To deny?
Yes, you two. All right. Those opposed, use the same right hand to raise hand. Okay. The request to rezone has been denied. The recommendation to request has been denied. Next item, zoning request for Waterford Crossing.
All right. So, Waterford Crossing, parcel 25765. So the applicant is Rachel Tired, it's E&C Home Solutions LLC. Location is Railroad Street at its intersection with Worthington Street and Vernon White Road. I think I actually had Worthington Road in your abstract, so I just want to make sure that's clear. We've got Worthington Street and a Worthington Road in town, so Worthington Road is going out toward Conley. I don't want to confuse that. So parcel number 25765 is 13.5 acres, currently agricultural residential, and their proposed zoning district is R6 conditional district. That conditional district will is proposed to have the following conditions. So all lots will be single-family residential. All lots will be a minimum of 7,000 square feet. All homes will be a minimum of 1,500 square feet heated. The development will consist of vinyl exterior siding on all homes with some elevations consisting of brick or stone accents on the fronts, and all homes will have garages, and all homes will be, all front yards will be sodded. So just housekeeping, our notification of the rezone request was posted on site on December 30th, and adjacent property owners were mailed notification of this rezoning request on January 3rd. So the Orientis, so outlined in blue, there's the property here. So you got Waterford subdivision here, Worthington Street here, Railroad Street here, Beacon Drive, and all those businesses up there. The intersection of Old 11 and 11 and Vernon White right here. So an aerial of the property, you can see the town substation here, the property again right here, Worthington Street, Railroad Street, Waterford. So it's kind of hard to see, but that's just an overlay of the boundary survey. You can see there's the property itself being just that parcel being requested for rezoning, Waterford up here. The current zoning, agricultural residential, as stated before, R20 with Waterford. You've got R6 existing here, R8. Across the road, you've got agricultural residential also, and then office and institutional with the train depot and W.H. Robson School there. So existing land use, you can see all this is single-family homes, and then this showing this property is vacant. This is going to be agricultural attended. Again, the school and then the depot there showing institutional. So our future land use plan, you can see all of this kind of pink mauve color is urban neighborhood character area. You see all of our character areas there, urban neighborhood, described further in our land use plan as higher density, predominantly single-family detached residential housing. Some attached is allowed in certain spots. So big thing here, takeaway is 3 to 8 units per acre. So a big swath, but we'll get into that in a second. Potential rezonings, you can see it's a wide scale again, but R6 is in there. So uses, small lot, single family, detached residential dominates the neighborhood character area. So that would be lots with approximately 6,000 to 10,000 square feet. And then, so duplexes and homes may be appropriate for some, but obviously we've already stipulated this is single family. So our land use goals and our policies and implementation guidelines in our policy are in our land use plan. So obviously we'd like to utilize our future land use map and character areas when coordinating land uses. So when we go, we want to make sure that it fits into our character area. It does in this case. Our economic development policies, so support rezonings to residential uses in the suburban residential, in the urban neighborhood character areas. So this is a urban neighborhood character area. So with that being said, planning staff recommends approval of the rezoning request. The planning staff finds the request is reasonable in the public interest because the proposed zoning district is compatible with surrounding land uses and future land use plan. Again, staff does recommend approval. So our process, obviously, comments now being entertained by this board, then you guys will make a recommendation to council. They'll see those recommendations, that recommendation on their next agenda in February to schedule a public hearing for March 13th. So with that, I'll answer any questions from the board.
The applicant has, they are pretty in line with the next step after, if approved, rezoning, to, go forth with submitting a plat and all that other.
Yeah, if approved, they would have to go through the same procedural. Preliminary plat would come before this board, then construction plans, and then final plat. So ultimately, everything's going to go back through you guys for that.
Right. Well, my question was, are based on the information you shared with their rezoning request, how close are they to the actual?
The applicants in attendance tonight, I'll let them answer that question. So we got Mr. and Ms. Tyre in attendance, and their engineering consultants with Art Consultant are here. So I'll let them present if you guys are ready for them.
Yes.
Okay. Let me pull up that.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Scott Anderson. I'm here tonight along with the applicant, and we appreciate the opportunity to present this request to you. What you see on the screen is a sketch plan that we have prepared just to show you a general idea of what a layout would look like if this rezoning request is approved. These are single-family lots. We have approximately 55 lots shown with this sketch. Access to the property would be off of Railroad Street and off of Worthington Street. We have reviewed this plan with NCDOT, and they have informed us that access onto Vernon White Road would likely not be approved. So all of our access to this property would be off of Railroad Street and Worthington Street. As Brian mentioned, we have worked with city staff to come up with a plan that closely aligns with the land use plan. And we feel that this request achieves that and also is a good and compatible with the adjacent neighborhood. We typically hear several things. We typically hear several things when we come to you with a rezoning request like this. One is concerned with traffic. One is concerned with stormwater. We hear concerns of value to the adjacent properties. And so we believe that this request is sensitive to all of those areas. A transition from a more dense residential use to a larger residential use is a very common land planning practice, and that is exactly what is included in your land use plan. This creates walkability to your downtown area as well as adjacent to W.H. Robinson School. That is helpful as you consider traffic concerns. If you can get more people walking or get more people closer to where they're going, that reduces overall traffic on the overall network. Right now, both Vernon White Road and Railroad Street have a capacity of about 12,000 trips per day. And in your staff report, you'll see that currently Vernon White currently has about 5,400 trips per day. And Railroad Street only has 1,400 trips per day. A development like this, we would estimate approximately 10 trips per day for a single-family home. So with 55 lots, you're looking at about 550 trips per day. So once you split those in 4 directions, north, south, east, to west, you're only adding a very minimal amount of traffic to the surrounding roadways. Again, this is just a sketch plan. This is where we're at in the process. We haven't done full engineering plans. That's getting the cart a little ahead of the horse until we know that this rezoning would be approved. But if this rezoning is approved, then we'll go into full design, and at that point, it'll go out to the different agencies for review, which would include DOT. Any traffic impacts, DOT would require us to mitigate that. So if there's impacts or concerns at the intersection of Vernon White and Railroad Street, NCDOT will require us to make improvements to that intersection. As far as stormwater goes, the town has a stormwater ordinance that requires that our impact after development is no greater to the surrounding ditches and streams than the current runoff from the current site. So we would build a pond that would capture that water and release it at a rate that is no greater than the water running off that site today. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have, or I will turn it over to the applicant for their comments.
Are there any questions from board members for the applicant or their representative?
With the existing neighborhood that borders the proposed neighborhood, will there be any additional borders constructed to separate them?
Yeah, I'll let the applicant will address that.
You can come to the podium, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Homer Tyre. This is my wife, Rachel Tyre. We are residents here and taxpayers here in Winterville. We have lived here until recently. We live, work, and play in this community just like everyone else in this room. And we have owned and operated a real estate investment and sales business for the last 20 years here in Pitt County. And so this project and this community is very important to us. We in no way, shape, or form wish to tarnish our brand, our name, and our reputation, much less the town, and disrupt the neighborhood. You had a specific question, Mr. Jones, in regards to borders. Currently, if you look at this project, there are approximately 24 homes that are adjacent on the west side. We did a calculation, it's roughly 73% of them already have some sort of constructed barrier or fence. Because we've weighed different options. Stormwater's been another thing that was discussed. We haven't quite made it to that point as far as a barrier is concerned, because are we going to fence for 30% that don't have something? And then our other concern is, does the town want to see double fencing? because when you have double fencing, sometimes it can cause an issue with who maintains between the two properties. It leads to overgrowth, it gets out of hand. I think it's on your property, you think it's on mine, and so that's one concern we plan to address with our engineer as we get further down the road. Mention of a berm was brought up. Our concern in talking with the residents, we have actually personally sat down and spoke with or met with a dozen residents in Waterford, and they brought the issue of stormwater drainage and flooding to our attention. We did not understand, or we weren't aware that they had an issue in their community. Our hope is, we don't live in Waterford, so we weren't aware of it. Our hope is, with the work of our engineer and our stormwater plan, if you look at our pond, our retention pond, it's completely across the development, and we're going to help push or pull that water to the opposite side of the property. Right now, they're relying strictly on gravity and natural flow through some of those ditches, and by putting in the culverts, the drain tiles, that sort of thing, hopefully we'll be able to disperse that water a little bit better. My fear with a berm is we're going to landlock some of that water, and that could potentially help us on our side but hurt them on their side, especially considering those drain tiles will be on our side of the berm. And I'm not an engineer, but been around a little while. Did that answer your question, Mr. Jones? Kinda, sorta, sorry. I wish I could give you a direct answer on it. A couple of points we wanted to bring, Mr. Chairman and members, to your attention. In speaking with the residents of Waterford, I think one of the first things that jumps out is there's a concern about density. Everyone automatically assumes that higher density means cheaper or lower quality homes. I actually today, in our line of work in residential real estate and our experience in new construction, today we went in and we pooled in Winterville all the new construction homes between 1,500 square feet and 2,300 square feet. The lowest priced home in Winterville today of a new construction home at 1,600 square feet was $302,000. I think there's a big misconception that just because it's an R6 zoning that it's going to be some sort of lower income or some sort of subsidized housing project or something like that. That is not the case. A couple other things. We've tried to be extremely proactive in working with the town. We actually presented a number of different ideas to the town, and they were very forthcoming in what fit the land use plan, and we have actually tried to conform our plan, our ambition for this community to fit what is in the best interest of the town, the plan that you guys have long term. Last couple of points I wanted to mention. Mr. Scott here mentioned as far as walkability. We do plan, and it's shown on the sketch, and I want to stress this is a preliminary, sidewalk access. Literally, the depot, and at the bottom right here in the bottom left, you can actually see the school buses to Walcoats. I'm sorry, not Walcoats, W.H. Robinson Elementary School, giving access to walk your child, ride your bike to school, pick up your child, less traffic, but also to provide walking access to the booming downtown commercial district that Winterville has. And then last couple of things. So one of the concerns that the residents also had in Waterford was, would this just be a free-for-all community neighborhood? Absolutely not. In 20 years of residential sales in this town community, there will be an HOA. It will be restrictive covenants. It will be managed by an HOA, professional HOA management company, to make sure we protect that integrity of the neighborhood. And last but not least, this is not some project where we plan to just go partner with any builder or any big box in town. Our hope is to partner with a local reputable builder with tons of experience, actually local custom builder with a ton of experience here in Winterville. And hopefully he'll address you guys here shortly. Let's see here. Let's see. And last but not least, Mr. Scott here mentioned, and so did Mr. Bryan, in regards to communities. I know some residents feel like, oh, wow, we're going to put an R6 next to an R20. This is very common in our county. You can look at Yorkshire Village outside of Brook Valley Country Club. You can look at Toll's Cove next to Blackwood. You can look at Quarter Path Village in Ashcroft next to Bedford and Chesapeake. It is not uncommon to see R6 zoning next to an R12, an R20. It's very common in our county. And let's see, what else? I appreciate your time and appreciate your consideration. And if you have any questions.
Any questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, guys.
At this time, we'll open up for public comment. Again, we'll remind those who do make public comment that you would sign up You will be limited to 3 minutes, and then at that point, we will move forward until we have all public comments made, and then board will take action. Sir, if you're here to speak, you can speak and then sign up after you speak.
I got just a few things. My name is Wayne Heiser, and I live at the corner of Lismore and Foxcroft. Actually, the address is 163 Lismore and 216 Foxcroft. It's a double lot. It is the biggest home in the entire area of Waterford. It's assessed higher than any other house in there. When I bought it 7 years ago, it was 5,500 square feet, and through legitimate permits that I applied to and was approved in this community, it's up to 7,280 square feet, heated. There's a couple things in this neighborhood. You talked about storm sewers. I don't know if anybody else has this problem, but on my corner, my entire front yard twice was underwater because the storm sewers backed up. Okay? Did anybody else have the same problem? Probably not, okay. But anyway, no, I got double storm sewers on the corner anyway. And I also have 2 sump pumps under the house. I have one in the backyard to take care of that problem, but it still put my front yard completely underwater. Beyond that, the traffic. I heard about the traffic thing, and you can do the count numbers, but go there between 4:30 and 6 o'clock on Vernon White, where all the traffic backs up for, I don't know how far fat. It's beyond Railroad Street most of the time, and on Mill Street beyond Lismore. It backs up because that's, the time of the day that's people are going home from work, and it's bad. And so that continues to be it. Our neighborhood with an R20 requires, in our restrictive or the covenants, if you will, which was mentioned earlier, we have to have brick or stone construction. They're going to have vinyl, okay? It's not the same. And depreciate the values of the homes through the assessments and all that. It's definitely going to happen. Because if I sell my house now, what's going to happen is, because I am the largest real estate owner as far as value in that neighborhood, I'm not going to get the value of my home for the improvements I put in it, and I know that. The CMA is going to tell me that. And with the R6s, why can't they put R10 or R20s in that strip of land? Why do we have to go all the way to R6 other than to make them more money? That's enough.
Thank you. And again, sir, if you would address the board with your name and share that before you begin speaking. And if there are any others that would like to make comments, if you would just go ahead and again to form a line behind this gentleman here.
All right, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Paul Kumo. I've been in general real estate. I live at 2304 Foxcroft Place in Waterford. I've lived there for 12 years. I've lived in Winterville for almost 20 years. I've been a general real estate appraiser for 21 years. I specialize in land use planning and development. I've worked with ARC. I've worked with just Mike Baldwin, many of these people. I've never been to a meeting in the town of Winterville in 20 years of doing this, and the hundreds of meetings that I've been to. Never had to, never wanted to. One thing I would like to talk about very quickly is obsolescence. Economic obsolescence or economic depreciation comes from incompatible zoning, comes from flooding, runoff, overdensity, high traffic. Okay, one of the things on Vernon White Road, I have a traffic study from DOT that I got from them. There's about 5,000 to 10,000 trips per day on average. On Railroad Street, there's somewhere between 500 and 2,000 trips per day. The proposed homes at 7 trips a day, at 7, not the 10 that were given, adds about 385 additional trips per day, somewhere between 385 and 550. At 385 trips a day, that's a 40% increase on Railroad Street. Okay, my daughter went to W.H. Robinson School. I live, right there. I'm on that road every day. So, in the collector streets around it, which would be Mill Street, Vernon White, Beacon, and Worthington, are going to pick up between 25 and 35% more traffic. That is a fact. Okay? Examples of high-density issues with traffic turns into speed bumps for neighborhoods. South Ridge, where I used to live at, has speed bumps because it became a cut-through. Glendale has speed bumps because it became a cut-through. This is an impact on everybody's quality of life. And obsolescence is is equal opportunity. Everybody gets to share in the misery. Everybody gets to share in the excess water. Everybody gets to share in the traffic. Everybody gets to share in the aggravation that it brings, whether you live in Waterford, whether you live in Mill Street, doesn't make any difference. Worthington. So you have a 61% increase in density right there versus what's behind it. Now, you have to be blind not to see that. And the other
30
thing
seconds.
is, not only with the increased density right there, I mean, you've got folks right there, there's two parcels right there on the edge of Worthington, and right there, that flood in the back of it or behind my house. So all I would tell you is, I live in Winterville, I don't live in Ayden, I don't live in Grimes, and I live in the best part of Pitt County, and I'd like to leave it a little bit better than I found it, and I'd like you to consider R20 or some other type of use. We're not against the development, we just like it done responsibly. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Monique Thomas, and I've lived in Waterford for more than 20 years, and I live right on Foxcroft Lane. The ditch is right behind my house. I'm not a long-winded person. I'm not even going to talk the full 3 minutes, but one thing that I can truly attest to is coming home from work late at night by myself, having to park my car at the edge of the development, getting my rain boots out of the trunk, walking through people's yards to go to my house because of flooding in the development already. And I pray that you do nothing that will make flooding issues worse in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Bill Chapman. I think my dad participated on this planning and zoning board years ago. He was one of the first houses, other than the Biggs brothers in Winterville. He was on Wolf Trap. When my parents passed away, I took over his home, and I bought a home around the corner from that after I renovated that house and sold it. I live on Foxcroft Lane now. I also live up against that ditch. I have also had to park my car outside the neighborhood and wade through 1.5 feet of water to get to my house. When that ditch becomes a torrential river, and it happens a couple times a year. This is not once a year. You put high-density housing there. I'm not sure where your research came from, but you put driveways and roads in an area where there's a large field that's a giant sponge. It's unlikely that that's not going to change that drainage. I'm a physician. I've been here for 28 years in Pitt County. I lived in Bedford, okay, the small third-acre lots with the big houses on them, okay? I like the larger property, which is why I moved into the stayed in the Waterford subdivision. Physicians like myself will move to the area, move to Winterville if there are bigger spaces, big homes, more property. It depends on what you're trying to attract to Winterville. The higher tax base, whatever. It's been said before, to go from R20 to R6 makes no sense, and it will depreciate the values of all of our homes in that neighborhood. It will worsen the drainage in the area. It will have a massive impact on traffic. Try getting out of our neighborhood now just onto Old Mill. It's a nightmare. When school's in, when ECU's here, it's a disaster. Okay, you're going to have to put 2 or 3 lights there, one on Vernon White, you're going to have to put one going to the downtown area, and there's just going to be massive traffic. Now, I like the idea of sidewalks, walking up and down, that sounds like a good thing, but that's a whole nother issue that the town needs to deal with as far as making access to the downtown area and making it more accessible to our neighborhood and to other neighborhoods. But I think this will be significantly detrimental to the Waterford neighborhood, to the attractiveness of the Waterford neighborhood, and to our property values, as well as have a distinct impact on the drainage and traffic. Thank you.
close this out. We all messed up, Michael. No, that's fine.
Good one again. There you go. Yeah? Oh, I just played something like that. Good evening, Board. I'm Michael Moore. I live at 237 Foxcroft Lane. I've been there for 20 years. I bought a lot and built there. As I was reviewing the zoning ordinance for the town of Winterville, some of the regulations mentioned promoting the orderly growth and development of the town, lessening congestion in the streets and the roads, preventing the overcrowding of land, and avoiding undue congestion of population. That's in the town coordinates. Also reviewed the comprehensive land use plan. There's some key points in there. One of them indicated strong support for single-family homes with large yards. That's the largest bar graph there at the bottom, 263. I did a search on Realtor.com for lots 21,780 square foot minimum. That resulted in 19 homes. We had 2 that are coming soon and 7 that are pending. So there's 11 active lots with the minimum square footage of 21,000 square foot in the Winterville city limits. If you search 7,500 square foot lots to 21,000 square foot lots, there's 92 results. I think there's plenty of them. And plus, town needs more larger lots to grow the community. Waterford is zoned R20. We have a minimum of 20,000 square foot lots. We have an average of 27,000 square foot lots and an average square foot of 3,200 square foot. I looked within the town of Winterville. There was only one other location where R6 abuts an R20, and that would be the Baywood Cornerstone subdivision. Baywood is zoned R20, Cornerstone is R6. Which one? So this would be the Baywood subdivision and Cornerstone beside it. That's the only location that has R6, that the town has allowed R6 to abut an existing R20. Cornerstone has restrictive covenants that require at least a 2,000 square foot heated square footage. And Cornerstone also has architectural review committee in which the majority of homes are all brick. The rezoning application for R6, 7,000 square foot lot, 1,500 square foot vinyl siding exterior does not align with the existing R20 neighboring subdivision. Also looking at your land use, it states, it may be necessary to deny a rezoning request if they do not fit well with the surrounding uses, even if the future land use supports that rezoning. Also in the public input for your community involvement, summary of survey comments, people mentioned. Anyway, here's the flooding for our neighborhood. That happens twice. There's the ditch that all our neighborhood runs into that you cannot stop an adjoining neighborhood run off into that ditch. That's Vernon White, where they're proposing to put more homes. Flooding is an issue.
Good evening, everybody. Hello. My name is Mary Ann Fleming. My husband Johnny and I, we live at 185 Foxcroft Lane. So we've been there 19 years. Our home is located directly behind the proposed land development area that we're discussing tonight. So we've been watching the various crops grow behind our home for all these years, and it's been very joyous, and our children have loved it. We've loved it. But we understand that, you know, things change. Our community experienced growth and development. I'm a licensed real estate agent, so I'm very familiar with the growth and development process. And I know that there's factors, also know that there's factors that affect our property's value, and that's our concern tonight. These factors can include the surrounding homes in our area, noise level, traffic, and property upkeep and maintenance. Now, we would love to see a housing development come behind us, but we would like one that's going to enhance our neighborhood, increase, not decrease, our property's value, not increase excessive noise and traffic, and not even talk about the flooding. So constructing 55 homes in that small area, wow, that's a lot. So, I mean, we would love for it to see it to be R20. So build homes similar to, very compatible to the ones that are in the Waterford subdivision. You know, we would love to see that. That would enhance our neighborhood, that would increase our market value of our homes and our tax value, which will benefit the town. So we appreciate if you would consider, yeah, if we're gonna develop, keep it compatible to what we already have established and what we're so comfortable with and what we love. So thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name is Corey Drew. I live at 230 Vernon White Road, which is right here on the street corner, right beside the substation, if you will. And my only concern issue is, you know, as I listened to Mr. Tyre, I think it's right talk. It made mention of a couple generic things that I would love to have had clarity on tonight. But I want to echo what Mary Ann talked about, which is the value of the properties and the lands. He had made mention that he looked around in Winterville, and there are houses that are 1,600 square feet north of $300,000. Now, my math, and I did go to public school, but that's $187.50. I don't know where that neighborhood is, but it could be. I would love to have seen a rendition of the houses that they're trying to put there when we're talking about value. When you're saying it's 100% potentially vinyl siding, that could be an issue, right, when you're talking about home values. And then the berm, that was totally out, right? So you're saying, hey, someone may have a fence here, or we may put a berm here, or we may put trees here, et cetera. So when I think about this, you're asking to be rezoned, but there's no specificity of what the plan is. In my mind, I'm totally naive. I could be totally naive to it, but, you know, if I want to know, hey, what are the houses going to look like? Are we in the planning stage? Because someone said earlier, once the genie is out of the box, it's out of the box. So if you say, hey, we're going to rezone, do we have to come back and then, say, hey, what kind of house can we approve to put here? Which house is going to add value? Which houses may not? So again, I'm all for growth, but I would certainly have loved to have specificity. And when you think about it, this was not even 1,600 square feet homes at $187.50 per square feet. This is 1,500. And the guys came up and said, yeah, 7,000 square feet. That's, you know, that's a little different. So I just wanted, you know, I would love to have those that level of understanding when you're asking for something like that, because I want to protect the property value of my home as well. So thank you for your time, and thank you.
My name is Deborah Phillips. I live at 125 Foxcroft Lane, and I've lived there for almost 25 years. On a good day, I loathe driving in Greenville and Winterville, and I just want to remind, it's my understanding that the property, their parcels of land at Old Tar and Vernon White also got rezoned for commercial. So I don't even know if the traffic that will be generated by anything that's put there in the future will add to the already horrible burden on Vernon White Road, Mill Street, and the like, because it's a nightmare in the morning, after school lets out, it's a nightmare in the evening time, and probably at least once or twice a month, I almost ram somebody who finally gets tired of waiting at the intersection of Beacon and Railroad, or Beacon Railroad Street and Vernon White Road, who wants to just dart out into traffic because they're tired of sitting there waiting for their turn. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jean Sokolowski. My husband is Wayne Heiser. I'm the one with two addresses, 163 Lismore, which is the one I claim. We moved here over 7 years ago, and we looked at, I would say, probably close to 100 houses when we were looking at where we wanted to live. Many more that were more prestigious than Waterford. Bottom line is, we liked Waterford. We liked Winterville. We felt safe. We could walk in the neighborhood, okay? And I feel for my neighbors across the street that gets flooding problems, and I feel for you, but I think we're all going to get it if we get more density there. So we're all going to be living with that. And I don't know how much we're going to be able to do in terms of walking around and feeling as safe, feeling that we've got a quiet neighborhood where we feel secure. And that may not be a lot to some people, but it is. It's very important to me. It's very important to my husband, and that's why we bought in Winterville. I mean, we believed the thing that said, Winterville, you know, a slice of the good life. That's why we moved here to this community. Also, and I'm sure some people were maybe had conversations with people that lived in Winterville. I know we're not right on, or Waterford, excuse me, we're not right on that line. We're retired, we're home quite a bit. No one ever came to our door. And I really, really hope that you vote not to rezone this. I think this could be a real black eye for the Winterville in terms of quality of life. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sean LaCove. I live at 245 Foxcroft Lane. Sorry about my voice. It's a little scratchy today. My property does abut directly back to this ditch and all the new product. I'm probably one of the younger people relative to this community. I moved here about 2 years ago. Came from South Florida, lived in very much an R6 community. And I can tell you, one thing that I have not heard a whole lot today is the noise, the traffic, the people. One of the beauties I found when we were coming up looking at houses up here, we looked at various neighborhoods and country clubs, et cetera, and we found the size of the lots here, the peace, the quiet, was what drew us to this neighborhood. There was room to move around, to let our dog out in our backyard. Abutting a R6 directly next to a community that's an R20 in this case is a dramatic change. I am not against a neighborhood coming in behind us, but that dramatic a difference, I can tell you from living in that, is not to be taken lightly. It is a massive impact on the community and on the property values. So I please urge you guys to consider rejecting the proposal as is, and hopefully we can get a community behind us that is more in line with the adjacent communities. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Johnny Fleming. I live at 185 Foxcroft Lane, and my property backs right up to the property that they're talking about rezoning. My concern would be the amount of noise, the density of that property, and the runoff. I could walk out my back door, and I would be able to see 4 homes in my backyard. And I know the noise level is going to increase. It's going to bring down the value of my property. and I'm against it, and I hope you vote against it also.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Jeff Foster. I live at 175 Foxcroft Lane, which is right in the middle. Can we get that picture back up of the proposed development? With the new lights.
You can get as big as you want.
Yeah, slide it down now. There you go. Okay. Thank you. This is our neighborhood. You've heard from my neighbors tonight. People who've lived there. Some of them built houses there when it started. My wife and I have been there almost 10 years. We've been in Winterville over almost 30 years. And you've heard everyone tell you why they don't want this change, this R6 change. This piece of property is 25% the size of the entire neighborhood. There are about approximately 90 homes on 64 acres. This proposal puts 55 homes on 13 and a half acres. Okay, that's 60% of the total homes in Waterford on 20% of the property. Okay, it's too much adjacent to our property. That ditch runs between the existing homes and the proposed homes. That ditch is there because that's the direction the land slopes in. Okay, it drains there, and I don't care what Mr. Tyre says, his property is going to drain there too. In the pictures you saw, we're going to have those problems times 3 or 4 if this development goes in. There's no plan for any kind of berm to separate. He says, well, there's some fencing there. Well, fencing between a field and a home is, I would propose to you, is different than what would be necessary to properly separate these neighborhoods. He even wants to mark it off our name. He wants it to be Waterford Crossing because he wants to tie the name and he wants to value add to his property using our name. These are not the same. These properties are not the same. The layout's different. The density is too much. You've heard about the traffic. You've heard about property values. You've heard about noise. All of those things are important. It changes the nature of our neighborhood. No one here is adverse to development. You know, people should have the opportunity to develop this land, and we've all lived next to this land for years. This is the wrong type of development for this land. It's going to be damaging to those who are already there paying fairly substantial property taxes. And I don't want houses on lots. I can fit 2 of those lots in my backyard. 2 of them in my backyard. That's not what needs to be next to our homes. And we just ask you to please consider these arguments and not allow this zoning change. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Stephen Phillips. I live at 125 Foxcroft Lane. And I'm not opposed to development either, but I think whenever I moved here 25 years ago, sitting down, looking over Pitt County, trying to figure out where I wanted to raise a family, the biggest thing to me was a large lot and having a good neighborhood for my children to grow up in. So you heard all the existing reasons why the people are there, but also you have to consider who you're trying to attract to this area. And if you want to attract more professionals, you need large spaces with single-family homes. That's why that was a priority on y'all's list of things for future development, large lots, single-family homes. And you will attract more professionals. Professionals that would love to have a sidewalk to be able to walk downtown and do things downtown and spend our money downtown and stay downtown and not have to go to Greenville all the time. So really consider your future development. And if you want to attract more professionals, then you're going to need large lots.
there any other public comments? If there be no other public comments, what is the pleasure of the board regarding the request to rezone for rezoning for Waterford Crossing?
I make a motion to deny the request.
We have a motion and a second to deny?
A second.
Okay, we have a motion to, you need which one? Okay, so the motion is to deny the request. Please vote by raising your hand to the affirmative of the motion to deny. Okay, you get that count? And those that oppose the denial. Okay. The recommendation for rezoning has been denied. Next item, subdivision ordinance reference amendment.
Let me give everybody a minute to clear out for a second. All right. So last thing on the agenda is some proposed subdivision ordinance amendments. So we got, this subdivision ordinance has been needing some overhaul for a while. So you see there, my bullet points are going to be several sections that need to be going, that need to be updated or amended. So I'll read through them real quick. So section 15402, which is our authority, so that's just going to be a statutory update. You guys will remember when we did the zoning ordinance update for 160D, that never got transitioned over in our subdivision ordinance, so we got to do that. No big deal. Section 15413, approval authority. So we're proposing for minor subdivisions to be a staff level approval and not have to come before P&Z and town council. 15416, again, that's going to be part of the plat submittal and review period, so that'll be tied into that minor subdivision proposal. 15417, effect of the approvals, again, that's going to tie back into to the minor subdivisions, and I'll get into that. The next one, connectivity and appropriateness of adjoining property. So it's been a long-standing policy to have two entrances, at least two entrances and exits in each proposed subdivision. That's not been codified, so we're proposing to add that language. The Article 5, guarantee of required improvements and warranty against defects. So this will probably be where we spend most of our time. As it stands right now, you have to, or you can bond out improvements before final plats. Staff has come to find out that's problematic. A lot of people have gone the way of allowing financial guarantees or performance guarantees in lieu of completion prior to final plats. Our timings with warranties, making sure it's done, sometimes it gets tied around itself, so we'll go into that. We're proposing to take that out and make all improvements must be installed prior to final plat approval. And then the last two sections, again, it's another statutory update, and then literally just some formatting updates. All right, so our first one, and as I go along, feel free to stop me as always. So this is, you'll see in it, in your summary, you'll see the red line is the existing language, and then the highlighted will be proposed language. So there you can see it's old language, statutory references. We're just putting 160D in there. Pretty simple. So authority, approval authority for types of subdivisions. So major and minor subdivisions, they're defined in the ordinance. One would be, more than 5 lots or 10 acres. Minor subdivisions, anything other than that, with no street improvements or no right-of-way improvements or no major installation of infrastructure. So we're talking these one-lot subdivisions out in the kind of ETJ areas, and so we're proposing just to take that off the table as far as having to do minor subdivisions the exact same ways we do major subdivisions.
So we wouldn't do the final plat on...
Exactly. It would all be staff level. And this is a very common practice. So when when we looked around, I know the county does that, City of Greenville does that, Ayden does that. I mean, so to take a one lot out of a 50-acre tract for somebody's mom or dad or son or daughter to have to come through a 3-month process is sometimes exorbitant. I mean, and the review comments on it are typically no comments. They're all going to be primarily housed with the zoning, or most cases it's going to be environmental health to make sure it's got a septic system availability. So what we're doing, final plats for minor subdivisions for single-family attached, no more than 2 units defined by the zoning ordinance will be approved for recording by the subdivision administrator and not by town boards.
So if that one house wanted to go on that 50-acre lot, say, and they didn't like what the staff said, is there any?
Absolutely. So there'll be recourse for them and we also put language in there. We're going to put language in there to make sure that in certain circumstances or out of the box circumstances, it will be before the board. So if it's just those one lotters running the mill, we're cutting out, a minor subdivision, it's going to be staff level approval, but we'll make sure we leave language in there for the avenue to come before this board under extenuating circumstances.
Would that be before it would go to Board of Adjustments if they disagreed, or would that even be in the process too?
Hopefully it wouldn't get to that. So we wouldn't, obviously the Board of Adjustment is there for, staff what's the word I'm looking for?
Mediation.
Yeah, for between staff approvals or staff determinations. So hopefully that wouldn't be a situation, but if we felt like it warranted approval, extenuating circumstances would include, if it is a quote-unquote minor subdivision, but they're having to install some type of public utility, we think it would probably warrant some type of review by this board and ultimately council or something. And I'm trying to think on the fly about what would warrant that, but so let's go. So the final plat must meet all applicable, so that's standard. So you can see where subdivision ordinance at his discretion may require any final plat for minor subdivisions or single-family attached to be submitted for approval to planning and zoning board. So that's really that's our language right there. So if staff determines it needs to come before this board, then we've got that avenue to come back before. And we treat it just like any other process. So so all of this would be under review periods. So if we're not doing final plats for minor subdivisions through staff, so all this language would be stricken, proposed to be stricken. And then, so this would be added. So final plats for minor subdivisions for approval by the subdivision administrator may be submitted anytime. So right now, there's a time deadline. You've got to meet TRC deadlines, meet P&Z deadlines, and then final plat, or in council deadlines. So, however, if warranted by unusual impacts or conditions, the subdivision administrator may require any final plat for a minor subdivision to be approved by town council on recommendation by the planning board, this board. Upon receipt and compilation of reviewing agency requirements, comments, and recommendations, the subdivision administrator shall approve or disapprove the plat. Failure on the part of the subdivision administrator to act on the plat within 45 days of receipt of an acceptable plat shall constitute approval, except where the subdivider voluntarily withdraws the plat from consideration or request that reserves that review to be continued. Such requests shall be provided to the subdivision administrator in writing. So we didn't just make this up. This is standard language. We pulled it from other ordinances that do the same thing. So I will note that the subdivision administrator will review and approve minor subdivisions. So minor plat review is intended to be used for simple, straightforward, routine subdivisions. The subdivision administrator shall have the option to requiring any plat to be considered by the planning board, regardless of its size, if something unusual arises. Any questions?
That puts a lot more responsibility back on you, though, doesn't it?
It does, but we'll still take it to TRC just to make sure. So it's still going to be a staff level, the TRC staff level. So we'll make sure everybody puts eyes on it. So it's not going to be come in my office, get it stamped, approved that same day. It won't be that. We'll treat it just like primarily like a site plan review, but we'll put all eyes on it, make sure everybody's got the okay before we move forward with it. The only exception we just wouldn't have to meet deadline submittals to get to this board and then ultimately town council. So. Any questions?
I do have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I think what comes to mind is the process that is open to one subdivision administrator interpreting and moving forward one way and another one doing something different.
So the subdivision administrator would be the plan director, so it would be me ultimately. Obviously, staff would be able to weigh in on it, but the ultimate decision would be my decision at the end of the day.
Right, I understand. I'm saying, is there room for another, let's say, 10 years from now, not Brian?
Sure.
Is
Yeah.
there room now for interpretation different? Because
Yeah, I see what you're saying, absolutely. So the ordinance would stipulate that the subdivision administrator is the planning director. So whoever sits in that role would be the guy or be the person, the man or woman to make that decision. So, yeah, I mean, theoretically, you could see somebody differ opinion from what I would, but it would still have to meet the requirements of the ordinance. So we're talking the underlying zoning district, the size of the lot, setbacks, all that kind of good stuff. There wouldn't be any room for open interpretation there. The definition of a minor subdivision is going to be the definition of a minor subdivision. So it would really be those unusual circumstances. So if someone didn't feel comfortable making that call on their own, they could let the board make that call. So again, we're talking still in the same realm of minor subdivisions. So actually, I'm sorry, we're moving on to section 154.17. So when we do a final plat or we do a development, when it's approved, everything's in the ground, infrastructure there, roads, sewer, water, all of our facilities, the town has to accept those for maintenance purposes. So if it's, oh, my voice. So right now, our ordinance is kind of flimsy on who gets to make that decision on acceptance. So we're literally not changing anything but adding one sentence. So acceptance of physical improvements will be made by the utility directors. That includes water, sewer, electric, town engineer, and ultimately the town manager. So they all have to sign off on that acceptance. Once the required improvements have been installed and are found to be in accordance with the approved plans and the town standards. So right now you can see, I think it may be the next one. So right now, it literally doesn't give any such right-of-way and improvements. Maybe I'll say there was the last sentence. Such right-of-way and improvements. Such right-of-way and improvements may be accepted by the town council by resolution upon completion by the subdivider and inspection by the subdivision administrator. So right now, that's literally what it says in there, subdivision administrator doing all the inspection. I'm not an engineer. I don't claim to be. I would never put my stamp on infrastructure ultimately. So right now, we are doing the process, what the language is in there. We just want to codify it, make sure that there's no confusion on it. So it gives ultimately, and then or his or her designee, we're going to add that in there. So we're going to keep the resolution by completion of the subdivider or inspection by subdivision administrator or his designee. So we'll still do resolutions to town council, but they have to have certification from utility directors, town engineer, and town manager before we can accept it.
And that's an and, not or.
That's an and, yep. So it's both.
Gotta be all of them.
We're adding that language just to tighten it up, for sure. All right, so connectivity and appropriateness to adjoining property and land uses. So when I started out, we talked about access requirements that the town has, it's more or less a policy that we want to see 2 access points when you do a subdivision. So we want to codify that. Most of this is going to be redundant language, but the one I really want to point out is, so obviously required subdivision access points. Number 1, when a residential subdivision borders on or contains a major thoroughfare, direct driveway access from lots within the subdivision onto the thoroughfare shall not be permitted. So that means we're not going to see individual driveway cuts for road frontage lots. So they got to be interior. That's redundant. It's already in the ordinance, but we felt it was beneficial to put it here as well. So in order to accommodate emergency service vehicles, the following standards shall apply. So the caveat on this would be the first phrase, unless restricted by areas of environmental concern, any residential subdivision greater than 30 lots shall include at least 2 separate and constructed access points. So obviously, we don't make that call what an environmental concern is. They would have to provide some type of technical data showing that it's either a wetland, a protected buffer, conservation area, something like that. So they would have to provide that to the board, and ultimately council would make that determination whether it meets that criteria. They can do it on, obviously, we would guide them through that process, but ultimately, the goal is to have multiple entrances to a subdivision. So street stub outs adjacent to properties will not count to these access. So we're still requiring stub streets to adjacent properties, but they do not count as an access. So they're going to have separate access points apart, separate and apart from those stub streets. Again, going further with the stub street connections shall be made to existing stub outs on adjacent developed properties. Again, this is redundant. This is also this is found elsewhere in our ordinance, but we felt it was beneficial to add on to this to make sure we clarify what we're talking about. And then all required access points outlined in this section shall be constructed prior to final plat recordation of the phase in which that access points are located. So technically you could have a preliminary plat with 2 access points. Phase 1 would have an access point, phase 2 would have an access point. So at the time of phase 1 recording, they would have that access point, but not necessarily have phase 2. So they could record a plat with 1 access, but the ultimate preliminary plat will show 2 access points. Does that make sense? I would point out that our land use plan does talk about our infrastructure and mobility to actually do exactly what we're doing right now, require at least 2 road connections if a subdivision has more than 30 lots. So this is something we talked about during the land use planning process.
Brian, for the sake of time, is it required that, since you send all this to us in our packet, correct, that you review every item with the board, or can we move with action if there aren't any questions?
Absolutely. I'm at the discretion of the board.
Are there any questions from board members regarding this information that Brian has sent to us? Okay, so the question then is that we approve the amendments that you're recommending?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what is the pleasure of the board?
I'll make a motion to, I'm sorry, it'll just right out of my head. I make a motion to approve.
Okay, it's been moved and properly second to accept the recommendation from staff for amendments to the subdivisions amendments. All those in favor, use the voting sign of aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. All right, staff report.
I think we've said enough tonight.
All right, comments from the board? No comments from the board? All right, motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
It's been moved and properly second. All those in favor, aye. Aye. Those opposed, you're welcome to stay.